coming to you. A lot of great things. I spoke with every single coach of every single school in the ACC when it comes to football. So that means Clemson, Florida State, Syracuse, Boston College, Louisville, Wake Forest, and NC State of the Atlantic Division, as well as Duke, Georgia Tech, Virginia, Miami, Pittsburgh, as well as North Carolina, all on the broadcast. Every single coach. The commissioner and I had an opportunity to speak with each other on expansion after his opening address. So you're going to get to see and hear from ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips. You're going to hear from every single coach of all 14 schools, and you're going to get student-athlete representatives from every single one of the 14 member institutions. So there is going to be so much on Wake Up Call for you to be connected to, and I'm ecstatic about the opportunity to bring that to you. So today is a prelude to what we're going to be talking about here on the show, which I'm very, very excited to be doing over the next, discussing a lot of different things, a lot of different wonderful representatives of the Atlantic Coast Conference. So we have to get out there and start answering some of these questions. I mean, the ACC, as I've said, I think that's been the whole point for a long time. Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, used to work at Notre Dame. And so it makes perfect sense, this whole woo factor, and in the hopes that he could do something with it. So, we'll see what happens in that respect. But there's definitely a lot to talk about. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of things that we're discussing here. There's a lot of things that were discussed at ACC Kickoff. Paying attention to what is truly going on right now and see what is right in front of all of our faces. So I implore you to definitely pay attention here and weigh in and give your thoughts and give your reactions, on ACC Kickoff. Did you hear, like I said, did you hear stuff that you wanted to hear? Did you hear things you didn't want to hear? Are there things that were talked about that you didn't expect? Are you shocked that certain things weren't brought up? So, there's a lot to unpack and a lot to get into when it comes to the ACC. And, this show is meant for my takeaways, right? What am I thinking coming off of the ACC Kickoff as we finish up the ACC Kickoff physically here in Charlotte, North Carolina, but I start my coverage to you on the show even more so now. So as much as we're done here in Charlotte, there's so many things coming to you. Like I said, there's going to be one-on-one interview conversations with every single school in the ACC for football. So all 14, every team, student-athletes from every team, head coach from every team, as well as the Commissioner the Commissioner Jim Phillips, John Swafford, the former one, Commissioner Jim Phillips, and you're going to also get my sit-down conversation special that I did with the Cotton Bowl Classic Director of Communications, Scotty Rogers. So there's many a thing coming to you on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, and I hope you're ready. And as I always say, buckle up, because it's definitely going to be a fun ride. It's going to be a fun coverage piece here. There's going to be a lot of different things that are going on, and I can't wait. So there's a lot to come here, and I'm definitely excited about everything we're going to bring to you on the show. So this is only the beginning. I finished up my time here doing interviews, but that means that you're going to be seeing them very soon. And there's a lot that we're going to be talking about here in the coming weeks. And obviously we'll be monitoring what's going on and if there's any changes that are being made and any moves that are being made. So let's get into, what I thought from each of these teams, right? So I'll give you a little prelude to the coverage that's going to be with each of these teams, and we'll give some thoughts on my takeaways from these teams. So I'm going to start with day one with the Atlantic Division, and I'll go in order of how they went up on to the stage. So with Florida State, Mike Norvell, I think the biggest things here is taking a look at, kind of where he wants things to go. And speaking on the, the end of divisions and whatnot, this could help out a school like Florida State, if and when they start to turn the corner. We talked to him about NIL at FSU. I did talk with him about that. Mike Norvell, always great. Had him for all 4 seasons that he was at Memphis, and I've had him now for the 2 seasons he's been at Florida State, this being year number 3. So this is my 7th year covering Mike Norvell in general. And my takeaways from Florida State, Fabian, love it. I enjoyed talking with him about Jermaine Johnson II and what he thinks he's going to be in the NFL and how he stepped up as a leader. Speaking about the FSU swagger with Jamie Robinson, and then with Jordan Travis sharing his time with Mackenzie Milton, and now that it's his team, what is that going to look like? So, my takeaways from Florida State are that, obviously they're a team that has history. They're a fan base that has high expectation. And at the same time, I think they're a team that's growing. I think they're, more ahead of the curve than some of the other teams inside of the ACC. I do know that, I do believe in Mike Norvell to help a program to get relevant and stay relevant. I think if Florida State gives him enough time, I think if they give him 5 years and then look at where he is, this is year number 3. It's kind of year number 2.5 because with all due respect to Mike Norvell and Florida State, they didn't play a full season in 2020, and that was also, the pandemic year. So there's all, obviously the story about Clemson and Dabo Swinney and the team coming to Tallahassee, and then Florida State going, yeah, we're not going to play you. And that did not lead to a great interaction, and I didn't think that it would. So, I think in year 2.5 for Mike Norvell, I think he needs 5. And, you could start looking at recruiting from there. You could start looking at implementation of his plans and his schemes and different things from there. And he'll have an entire team that's his, which, would go a long way. So I think, Mike Norvell and Florida State are in a place where I think they're going to improve. But I still think that Mike Norvell needs time, and I think 5 years is a sweet spot. Dave Claussen, he was a guy that was given time, and being given time with Wake Forest, look at the dividends it's paid off. I've been a Dave Claussen fan from the beginning of covering him in the ACC, and I don't understand why Wake Forest doesn't get the coverage it deserves. I don't understand why people didn't want to interview Dave Claussen over the years, and it would be kind of quiet. And I was like, okay, well, if we're on the teleconference, I want to talk to him, and if nobody's going to ask a question, I'll ask a follow-up, and I'm going to make the most of the time here with Dave Claussen. So I think, for me, he's definitely a coach who's done a tremendous job. I told him so at the ACC Kickoff. I said, listen, I defend you. I've been doing it for a while, and he deserves it, and the team deserves it. So I think Wake Forest is going to be a strong team inside of the Atlantic Division. The Atlantic Division has been the stronger side of the ACC in recent history, and I think with Florida State at least getting a little bit better, I think Wake Forest being good, being better, I think NC State being better, I think BC getting better. I think really the two teams I'm most concerned about in the ACC Atlantic Division are Louisville and Syracuse, and we'll talk about those as we continue on here in my takeaways from ACC Kickoff. But, really my thing with Wake Forest is I think there's a different energy around them, and I think that it has been good to see people, because when a team's doing well, everybody wants to cover them, and I think now Dave Claussen has to show, okay, you know what, we're a 10-win team. We're gonna win double-digit games. We're gonna push it to the end like they did with Syracuse and double overtime in the Dome. We're gonna make these games interesting. We're gonna make them fun. They didn't have an effective game in the ACC championship against Pittsburgh. They lost 45-21. So there's more left on the table for Wake Forest. And I don't think the college football playoff would respect them. I don't think they would let them in, even if they were undefeated and won the ACC championship. I think the only team that can make it out of the ACC and get into the college football playoff without any concern is Clemson. And Clemson could lose a game, and they have, and I think, they can get in the college football playoff. But I don't think Wake Forest still gets what they deserve, and it's not fair, and it's unfortunate, and I really do hope that this team's going to do better. And you look at the defense side of the ball. I talked to Rondell Bothroyd about the defense that created 29 turnovers. 29 turnovers last season, and he said they're going to be better, which, and he said, 29 is a lot, but they're looking to improve. And then, getting to talk with Michael Juergens, winning in the trenches, a really awesome stat for Wake Forest, which shows you why they were so successful last year on a very, very strong season, is the fact that they were over 50% effective on third down. 53.3% of the time on third down, they were getting a first down. And you'll see teams in games that are 10%, 8%, 12, 15, 20, and to see that, Wake Forest, I mean, there's teams on third down 3 for 8, 2 for 10, 2 for 7, 2 for 8, and in Wake Forest's case, over 53.3%, so more than half the time that they had a third down situation, they were gaining a new set of downs, which says a lot about Michael Juergens out of Damascus, Maryland, and the rest of the offensive line, as well as the skill players and their quarterback, Sam Hartman, who I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do this year. I think other quarterbacks still get more fanfare than Sam Hartman. And again, I think if you're at Wake Forest, you have an eternal chip on your shoulder, and that's a good thing. Being a redheaded stepchild, there's nothing wrong with that. I know exactly what that life feels like because I live it, every day, all the time. And so I definitely am excited to see what we're going to get out of Wake Forest. And, I think it's always a journey with them where they don't get the respect that they deserve. But I think, they kind of like it that way. So, I'm excited. I really am when it comes to Wake Forest, kind of my takeaways on them. Louisville, I think Scott Satterfield, I think this was kind of in a bad way for a long time now. I'm very concerned about the situation because, I think we're living in a world where, Satterfield in his first year, again, at Louisville, there was this reality, that he had talked to South Carolina, and it's not that coaches don't necessarily do this all the time, but he did it and he got caught, right? And not even got caught, because I don't want to say got caught. It's not like you can't do it, but when they found out that this was going on, fans got, obviously upset. He's only in his first year with you. He wrote a letter to the fans, which I thought was, a little bit outrageous. I didn't think, he needed to do that. And I didn't think he needed to apologize in that type of way, right? But again, coaches do that. But it kind of makes, I guess if you're the fan base, you're like, well, why the heck did you come here? If in less than a year's time you're looking at leaving and going somewhere else. At the same time, again, I think a lot of coaches have conversations, and it's just the fact that his conversations were out in the open. But I think that kind of doomed them from the first year, and the fact that he hasn't won a ton of games. On top of that, I think that this is the year that we could see the end of Scott Satterfield at Louisville. I think we could see the end of Scott Satterfield at Louisville during the season. So I definitely feel bad for him, and I feel like his days are numbered at this point when it comes to his time in Louisville. So, and we talked about the fact of realignment, and he spoke on the fact that Louisville's been in a lot of different conferences, which is, what I said, and, it talked about it a few days ago, and obviously being facetious, but I was like, they've been in, like 170 different conferences. And so, Louisville's jumped a lot more than people think, and I think that they'll be jumping from Scott Satterfield this season. And, I hope he lands on his feet and finds the right fit, because it just seems like this was in a bad way from the beginning, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any better. And I don't see it getting better this season as far as wins and losses. Yasir Abdullah, I got to talk to him from Miramar, Florida, coming off of a 10-sack season, just what he's been able to do, defense as a whole, and just looking at this. And, I think Louisville's going to have some trouble. I'm concerned about them. And, so we'll see what happens from here. Caleb Chandler and I talked about the fact that he has had multiple offensive line coaches, I believe 3 offensive line coaches in 3 years at Louisville, and that does not bode well. Ask Syracuse about situations like that, like how life has been under Dino Babers. There's been a lot of turnover and a lot of change, either from guys being fired or leaving every single season in his 6 seasons as he steps into year number 7. And when you have a different position coach all the time, it can affect you, right? It affects Eric Dungy. It affected Tommy DeVito. It affected the offensive line at Syracuse. So there's a lot to be said about that. Malik Cunningham, my biggest takeaway from him, when I saw him walk up on stage and I saw his red suit, I thought to the Heisman Trophy ceremony, he wore the red suit. And I think, to Malik's credit, his was more vibrant, but it was cool. And I asked him if he channeled Lamar Jackson. He said he actually hadn't thought about that, which was kind of interesting there. But that was something I really took away from Malik Cunningham, right, is that, people talk about Lamar Jackson and they talk about Teddy Bridgewater. But looking at Malik Cunningham and what he's been doing and how he's been doing it and the dual threat that he is, Louisville may not do well, but he may do well, is how I see the season going. NC State, Dave Doran, fantastic coach. Like I said, with Dave Claussen, I've been defending Dave Doran for a while, and so I'm excited to see him. I know that I was speaking with Dave Claussen, obviously, and I spoke with him about divisions in the 3-5-5 model, and he talked about the more than one straight history of Wake Forest playing NC State. Duke has all the Carolina teams. Duke has their 3 permanent teams are NC State, North Carolina, and Wake Forest, but that's not what Wake Forest has, so they're not going to have that NC State game anymore, and that is something that I'm sad about, and I don't think it's the greatest thing. Devin Leary and I talked about their quarterback at NC State for the Wolfpack. We talked about, losing Icky to the NFL and, just obviously having the next man up approach. And then Isaiah Moore getting involved. He's got a clothing line, which is a part of his name, image, and likeness. And Drake Thomas, who filled in for him last year when he tore his ACL, Drake Thomas actually rocked one of his shirts to show support. And it was cool to talk with Isaiah Moore about that because you could tell it meant something to him and it stood out to him. And, Drake Thomas is coming onto a defense where he is, he's had experience playing everything. He's played strong side, he's played weak side, he's played middle linebacker, so he's played outside, inside, both outsides, and I think that says a lot about his versatility and a lot about, what he can do. And, sometimes you got to switch positions due to injury, not, due to necessity, you got to switch it, and not necessarily because that's where coach saw you at the beginning of the season or maybe, if that's where they want you specifically, but that's where you're going to be because they need the help. And Drake Thomas has shown that he has been in these multiple situations, these multiple positions. So I'm excited. I definitely am excited to see what's going to happen here with the NC State Wolfpack. Because like Wake Forest, I think they're 2 teams in the Atlantic Division that have a real chance of pushing Clemson. And with all due respect to NC State, they pushed Clemson for a couple of years, and they were right there. There was one game they could have won. I think they missed 2 field goals. They missed a field goal that would have ended the game in regulation. They went to, they went to overtime, but I think they went to double overtime and they lost. And then they lost again to Clemson when they had them on the ropes. And, but now they've been playing better against Clemson. And, I think there's a lot to be said about what they've been doing lately against Clemson and, beating them most recently. So in Clemson's down year, which I still think is ridiculous that people call it a down year, but I think NC State definitely has a shot. And I'm going to be releasing my preseason poll as well. That's going to rank all these teams 1 through 7 for the Atlantic and 1 through 7 for the Coastal, as well as, obviously my 2 1s going to the ACC Championship and who I think is going to win the ACC Championship. But I'm excited to see NC State. They always have a lot of talent that makes it to the NFL. And so, collegiately and professionally, strong players, good players. Boston College, Jeff Hafley. Love talking with him. He's been a lot of fun lately. And I asked him 3 questions. I raised my hand, and, you hope that you get a question in. And when there's, more time, you try to get in 2 or 3. I try to let other people have the opportunity because the coaches and players aren't up there that long at the podium. But, when the room is open, I'm going to take those opportunities. And Hafley and I talked about a lot of different things. We talked about hiring John McNulty as the team's new offensive coordinator. We spoke on hindsight 2020, why he picked Boston College, and we spoke on the end of divisions and the start of the 3-5-5 model. Had a good time with Jeff Hafley. I'm excited to see what Phil Jerkovich is going to do, the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania native who went to Notre Dame and then came over to Boston College, got hurt last year. Boston College is known for ground and pound and tough defense, right? Traditional, old school, play really good defense, run the rock down your throat. And with Jerkovich, you're expecting them to obviously get out there and throw the ball. A coach spoke on the fact that he needed to get the ball to Zay Flowers, their wide receiver. And so, that is something cool. Also finding out that Zay Flowers is the 11th of 14 children. Shout out to Trip Durham for mentioning that fact. And then Josh DeBerry, talking about the fact that the team was 3rd nationally in pass defense. Opponents' completion percentage was at 57.9% on the season and only 14 total passing touchdowns. happened against Boston College. So kind of interesting how Jeff Hafley's opening up the offense, but keeping the defense very, very strong and stout nationally, not just in the ACC. Syracuse, inside of the Atlantic Division, taking a look at them, this is a year where Dino's really got to show kind of what's going on, what's the plan, It's you hear the plan, you hear the plan, you hear the plan. Well, now we got to see it, right? When if you got a plan to get off the Titanic and you keep talking about the iceberg and we're going to get where, and when we run out of rafts, what are we going to use in the water, and how are we going to keep you warm, and do we have any blankets or anything we can send you with? So you can't. So if you have a problem and you focus on the problem, then you keep the problem. And if you focus on the solution, well, then you get rid of it. When you have good individual players, but collectively you don't win games, that is when it becomes a coaching problem, right? If you have if you have a good coach and the players just aren't, it's just not clicking, it's just not happening, well, then that's another thing. But when you have good, strong players, when you have Ifeatu Melifonwu's and you have Mo Neals and you have Eric Dungy's and you have Sean Tucker's and and all these guys that they've had on the team, Ifeatu Melifonwu and Trill Williams. When you have guys like that, right, and you have the Cody Roscoe's and the Josh Blacks and the Aaron Services and so on and so forth, when you have players like that and you're not winning, to me it says something about your coaching. And when your coach calls a timeout after a timeout, it definitely says something about the coaching situation. So, I think in this case for Dino Babers, the question mark is, every single year, why is a staff not kept together? They either quit or they leave. There, they'll let you fire a coordinator or two. And if you fire one and you're still not doing well, they might let you fire the other one. And then when you have the two new coordinators for offense and defense on the team and you're still not winning, it's typically when they let you go. And we've seen John Wildhack allow Dino Babers to have multiple iterations of coordinators. And, Tony White's been working as D coordinator, but the offensive side of the ball has multiple times switched their offensive coordinator. And so I think, this is a year where it's put up or shut up when it comes to Syracuse and Dino's regime. Matt Bergeron, he's had versatility. He's been able to play left tackle and right tackle. He's one of the few players on the offensive line that played early in his career at Syracuse. So definitely excited to see what this Canadian native has up his sleeve this coming season. Michael Jones, all the weapons that he has in the secondary. The fact that have anybody that they're thinking about, for the future to be a head coach and just kind of where they're putting it. I want to see Dino win. I told him that when I met him. I said, I want to see you win. I want to see you win every single game. So I'm going to be optimistic about Syracuse. I love the players. I respect players. And, I'd like to tell you I love the coach. I respect the coaches. I'd love to tell you I love them, but we don't get to see them ever, right? We're not allowed to, in Dino Babers' regime, we're not allowed to talk to the coaches. We're not allowed to see the coaches. We're not allowed to be around the coaches. We're not allowed to interview the coaches. So it's just a weird world, and it's unfortunate because I think I would definitely know a lot more about the team if they let us into practice and actually let us be a part of this more so. So, I am looking forward to Syracuse's season, and, I think it's 5 of the first 6 games are at home, so there's a lot to be said about that. Notre Dame and Purdue are coming to the Dome, which I think is cool. Louisville's coming to the Dome, first game of the season, and it's considered a conference game in the first game of the season, which I think is really cool. So I'm really excited for that and looking forward to a lot of different things this season with Syracuse, and we'll get into that as we go. Greg said you hit up Zaxby's and Bojangles. All you need is Cookout for the Queen City trifecta. Yeah, I saw Cookout last night. I saw how busy it was. So I did see Cookout, and I wanted to try one of the other places too, Sonny's Barbecue, which was also down in St. Augustine and Jacksonville area. Clemson, the last team to talk about here in the Atlantic Division, giving you my thoughts from now that we're finished up ACC Kickoff. This is the night after, or this is the night of our final day. So we wrapped up Wednesday was the Atlantic, and today was the Coastal. And now that it's nighttime in Charlotte, the entire ACC Kickoff is finished. So I'm giving you my in the moment and takeaways from each team and just kind of what's there and kind of what you and their coaches and their student athletes from every single institution, speaking with student athletes from every one of the 14 member schools, the coaches of every single team in the ACC, and speaking with Committee Rogers, who was in attendance. He's in a unique world, right? Brent Venables stayed forever, but seeing that they're becoming head coaches was obviously this is a good time, and become head coaches somewhere else. What he likes about the culture of Clemson, and it's just a different culture. There's a different way that these gentlemen handle themselves, and I really respect it because it seems very professional. And I find that this is a parallel, right? The most professional teams, to me, are typically ironic because he's on the field and he has to have a mask on and he can't play. And then you got all these fans from Notre Dame rushing out onto the field, no mask on, don't care, going by security. What I found that happened. So, that's when they were in South Bend, when Notre Dame faced them in Trevor Lawrence in college football. And, they're trying to knock him and say this, that, and the other. But he's a true freshman, so I think we really need to take that into account. And so, I think hopefully this, will be a better season for DJ. And, I talked to Sean Watson, so now it's time for DJ Uiagalelei to see what he can do from Inland Empire in California. But I fully anticipate seeing Clemson become the number one team in the last year of divisions in the ACC. For today, we had the Coastal Division, and the Coastal Division, more than half of the Coastal Division has a new head coach. The only new head coaches in the ACC are in the Coastal Division, and it's more than half of the division with 4 of 7. So the first one we're going to talk about is Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal with the Miami Hurricanes is their head coach, returning to Miami, where he won a national championship in 1989, and he won another one in 1991. So I got to talk with him about a bunch of different things, and I'm excited to share that with you. Excited to, speak with him over time and get to know, his successes and what makes him tick. Mario Cristobal did away with the turnover chain. You could find out today by going back and watching and listening that he is no fan whatsoever of the turnover chain, and he got rid of it. And it was funny because it was like he was kind of done talking about it, and he turned and he looked at the 3 guys that joined him on the podium today, Jafari Harvey, Will Mallory, and Tyler Van Dyke, and he was like, yeah, we're getting rid of the turnover chain. Is that okay with you guys? And they're like, yes, coach. And he's like, okay, well, if it's okay, now it's okay with you, so let's move on. And it was like almost just showing people like how ridiculous it is. It's like, we got rid of it. We're not asking your permission to get rid of it or keep it. And we're, and then when it was like, well, did the team say yes? I said, yeah, they did. And, I think looking at Clemson here and what they can be this year, I think people need to kind of back off on DJ and let him play his game. I'm sorry, I went over to Clemson here for a second. Just crossed pathways here in my brain. Two oranges. But no, Miami, I think when he said, can I get rid of the turnover chain, basically, I mean, you could tell they already had the conversation and whatnot, but he was like, are you guys okay with it? And they're like, yes, coach. And he's like, good, let's move on. Let's be done with it. You could tell that he really doesn't want to hear about the turnover chain anymore. I think Mario Cristobal is trying to change the culture of Miami, and maybe he's trying to clean up some things, make some things, more presentable. And get rid of the turnover chain, I think it does that, And so I liked the turnover chain with Manny Diaz that he had when he was D coordinator and then head coach. But I think that also, I think there's negative connotations of teamwork and not this individualism and just kind of this, giant, goofy-looking chain that almost looks like Flavor Flav when he wore that giant clock. So I can understand Mario Cristobal saying, let's do this a different way, and let's have some traditions that are a little classier, a little more showing that we are evolving and we're growing. And speaking of evolving and growing, the bank account for the University of Miami may be having less money inside of it, as there's the notion that North Carolina, Mac Brown, one of my favorite things that he said today is somebody said after after last season, we ranked so high. It seems like you've been under this season, and to North Carolina for his second stint. They've had immediate success, and I think the trouble with immediate success is when you see it happen, and you see it happen that quickly, you're thinking, oh, okay, this coach came in here and changed everything in 5 minutes, and so now he's got to keep doing it, right? He's going to keep doing it. He's got to keep doing it. He's going to keep doing it. He's got to keep doing it. He's going to keep doing it. And, this what have you done for me lately ridiculousness of reality here is the fact that, Clemson's a prime example, right? You go 10-3, you don't go to the college football playoff, you don't vie for a national championship, and all of a sudden you had a bad year when you lost 3 of the 13 games that you played in. So, I think with North Carolina, it was like, you were grossly underrated now, and he said, yeah, we're grossly overrated. And I love that. I love that. And I think, he also made a joke of saying, I try to get them to rank us at the bottom of, all of the FBS so that they could have that chip on their shoulder. Love talking to Mack Brown. Remember the first time I interviewed him, which was when he came back a couple seasons ago, and sat in front of him, and I asked him about the why. Why come back to North Carolina? And he was talking about his wife and how it was like, hey, it's Hawaii or here. And, that ultimately it worked out for him to come back to North Carolina. And I'm excited about it. It's amazing how he had that immediate success. So then the expectations get so high. And usually when there's immediate success, the expectations get unruly because you might tell someone, hey, it's going to take a couple of years, and it takes a couple of weeks. And they're like, hey, we're planning down the road to see what this team can look like 3 years from now, 4 years from now. And when you have success that quickly in year one, I think Mack Brown's kind of in a position where he may be on the hot seat already, outlets and getting up on YouTube and whatnot. And that is Mo Neal. And Mo Neal's from Gastonia, North Carolina. British Brooks is from Gastonia, North Carolina. Both running backs. Syracuse, in his 4 seasons we were there, and he was there where he caught the ball for over 500 yards. He ran for 2,560 yards and averaged at least 5 yards a carry every single season of his 4 seasons at Syracuse. We'll see what British Brooks can do now, and it was great to talk with him about Gastonia because in a way I got to connect him with Mo Neal and Mo Neal's family, and I love Tracy and Shelley and Mo and the whole group, so much love to them all. Josh Downs caught over 100 balls last season. Pretty awesome here. And, he's got a quarterback situation now where they're still trying to figure out who's going to be throwing to him. So that's going to be something to watch this season. Ironically, the rivals are in that situation. North Carolina and Duke don't 100% know right now at ACC kickoff time who their starting quarterback's going to be for 2022. So that's something to keep a big eye on. Cedric Gray, getting to talk with him about his journey to North Carolina, and head coach Mack Brown speaking on his leadership and talking about him as a leader and Cedric and what he wants from what's going on. I mean, obviously these guys heard a lot of stuff, and maybe they bought into the hype, maybe they didn't, but they definitely heard a lot of things last year at North Carolina from fans, from the media. And if they let any of that get to their head, then, you could see where they finished up this past season. But you're looking for a new quarterback leader with Sam Howell now on the Washington Commanders as a rookie. You got to get the ball out to Josh Downs, and you're going to run the rock too. So, I'm going to be watching North Carolina closely and, not just be throwing them in as ACC Coastal Division champion, because, like I said, myself and others thought a couple of years ago that it was going to be Clemson, North Carolina, and ultimately North Carolina has been underwhelming. I think Mack Brown is better, and now it's about putting it together on the field. Pittsburgh had a great time talking with the Pitt Panthers, always do. I like Pat Narduzzi, Doozer. Shout out to a bunch of wonderful people at Pittsburgh and what the history was like and what you've been able to accomplish. And, of course, Tony Dorsett and Al Romano and their team winning a national championship, and that happening multiple decades ago. And so I thought it was cool to talk with Pat Narduzzi about that. I also think it's really cool for Tony Dorsett to get named there, and Tony Romo, and Al Romano. And so Al Romano as well as Tony Dorsett to be talked about there, and to speak on the history of Pittsburgh, right? That they've won national championships. It's been a long time that they've done it, and that they've recruited well, and they've sent guys to the NFL. Al Romano, Tony Dorsett, Dan Marino, Larry Fitzgerald, Kenny Pickett recently here, Aaron Donald, and how high he's paid, and to some people he's the best player in the NFL, to other people he's the best defender in the NFL, to other people he's at least the best defensive lineman and pass rusher in the NFL. So, and coming from Pittsburgh. So there's a lot of good in Pitt. Love talking with Deslin Alexander. I got to know him last year in their run to the ACC Championship and eventual Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Servassier Dennis from my hometown, from Syracuse, New York. So, that Syracuse and Central and Upstate New York representation. We went to the same high school, Christian Brothers Academy, albeit at different times. And so he's repping Syracuse at Central New York. He's repping CBA. And, Servassier is also repping the Pitt Panthers. So I'm excited. And he wants to be a sports agent, which I think is awesome. And out of all the interviews I've done and everybody I've talked to, I don't know if any student athletes ever told me that that's what they want to be. So I think that's really, really cool and really interesting. And I'm definitely excited for what Servassier is going to do next on and off the field. Carter Warren, just a sweet guy. Everybody was nice. I got to talk to Deslin. I interviewed them all, including and Pat Narduzzi. And then when they were done talking, I actually saw them out in the hallway and got to speak with each of them individually again. Speak with Deslin Alexander as well as Carter Warren and Servassier Dennis. So definitely looking forward to a strong Pitt year. I know people are buying into the hype of Miami, and I think that happened a couple seasons ago in our ACC preseason poll. But, to me, Pitt has shown on the field. And, Miami, it's more of the belief and the hope in Mario Cristobal coming back and his name and all of that stuff, as opposed to what Pitt's already put on the field, right? Which I think is very reputable. Virginia, I mentioned it. Some takeaways here. Tony Elliott taking the job and becoming the head coach here. Dabo Swinney did say that, when he spoke with Tony Elliott about it, who is his former offensive coordinator, and, he said Virginia is the right fit. Like, you got to take it. And, so Tony Elliott, obviously speaking with Dabo Swinney, and he said, he's a father figure to him and has now, become more of a peer to speak with on a lot of different things. So I think it's really interesting that, Dabo Swinney said, hey, I told Tony Elliott it's time, and then Tony talking about that as well. Brennan Armstrong and Keaton Thompson, two guys that can throw the ball. Brennan is a traditional quarterback. Keaton is a non-traditional quarterback, and who is now playing wide receiver, but has been all over the field. I loved that Coach Tony Elliott said two different things. He said, I just don't want him to get to the NFL. I want him to get to the NFL for a long time. And he was speaking on Keaton Thompson. And he also said he's on you every single day, and when I was talking with Keaton Thompson, I said that, to him, Coach said that he's on you every single day and what he thinks about that. So there was some fun in those responses, and I definitely appreciate it. Nick Jackson was fun to talk with as well on Tony Elliott. And Brennan Armstrong and I spoke about the fact that his quarterback coach that he's had so much success with at Virginia, Jason Beck, is gone when Bronco Mendenhall decided to resign from Virginia and step away. A bunch of those staff members moved on and went elsewhere. Robert Anai, the offensive coordinator at Syracuse, came from Virginia, and Jason Beck, the quarterback's coach. It's interesting when I asked Brennan Armstrong about it, because he spoke about his new quarterback coach, his position coach, and the relationship that they're building, and that it's more of a partnership. And when he was talking about Jason Beck, it just didn't seem all too positive. So that was an interesting takeaway there. Duke bringing in Mike Elko. I spoke with Mike Elko about the fact that he spent the last 4 years at Texas A&M with someone who is no stranger to the ACC, and that's Jimbo Fisher, who spent many years under Bobby Bowden at Florida State, then became the head coach of Florida State now, and definitely like that 4 season now. I can't even believe this. I feel like it's year 2 or 3, but Jimbo Fisher's going into his 5th season at Texas A&M, and Mike Elko, like I said, worked for him. Dwayne Carter, we spoke about how Duke has fun, what they do to loosen up and have a good time. You definitely have to go and listen to that. I spoke with Shaka Hayward, the linebacker on the team, and just what the atmosphere has been like with new head coach Mike Elko, as well as the staff, and just getting a feel for who Duke is going to be. And they had a different feel to them. They almost seemed like they were having fun this time around, where it was more serious in the past. And then Jacob Monk, talking about an offensive lineman and that being a thankless job, and just what his thoughts of hearing that. Jacob Monk, how does he handle the fact that offensive linemen do a ton of work but are not typically the ones being spoken about? And then I got to speak with Georgia Tech and spend some time, and it was great, to be remembered and appreciated. Mike Norvell remembering me from the 4 years at Memphis and all the way through in his whole time at Florida State. And then this gentleman from Georgia Tech, Jeff Collins, remembering, me calling him and us, obviously we were doing interviews before the season, and then he spent 2 seasons at Syracuse. Jeff Collins had 2 seasons up north at Temple before moving on to Georgia Tech, and it's just, it's not been working on the field. So I asked him what he's seeing, what are the positives that, we don't see in the win-loss column as they look at year 4. Dylan Leonard, he was fun to talk with as well, and if he has a chip on his shoulder because, like offensive line, tight end, which is an extension of the offensive line, is also another thankless job. Hassan Hall, who was recruited by Syracuse, tandem, and Zamari Walton. He has 1 sentence next to the fact that he is a Georgia Tech defensive back. Beyond that, he has 1 statement on Twitter, and it says, "Pursue the Lord at all cost." And I thought that was a great quote, a very hiding his faith, so that was cool. And then Virginia Tech ended the day. So, and I think that this is a pretty interesting thing here to see this. And, taking a look at Virginia Tech, how, and I said, cool to see this, just what they're going into. I interviewed Frank Beamer, and I interviewed Justin Fuente. I spent, I think, 3 seasons with him at Memphis, and then the whole time here at Virginia Tech. So I got to interview Frank Beamer, Justin Fuente, and now Brent Pry. Brent Pry, totally different personality, unique personality, and they all have their own personality, and I like them all. Important, and they have some fun with him, obviously within reason, and that they have to respect him. But I liked the attitude of Brent Pry and getting to talk with him. And then offensive lineman Silas Dzansi, speaking with him about the transfer quarterbacks, and he's kind of just plain and simple. It was like, these 2 transfer quarterbacks are the institutions. Great deal for ESPN. Not a great deal through 2036. Well, what are you going to do to try and generate more money for the conference? That's come up, having regulations for name, image, and likeness to be successful. And, it has been a long couple days, so I'm going to bid you adieu for the night. But I have a special exclusive airing with Enrico Mastriani this Friday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm excited to bring that to you. And outside of that, this is, like I said, a prelude, right? Some ACC, as well as making some notes on what Jim Phillips said to me, the commissioner. So watch this video back, share it with your family every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. and YouTube. Upstate New York partners that make all of the Wood Pacers, and with all of our exclusive multi-et.com, and of course for all 3 of these institutions to get our library of these schools, as well as trying to sit down with others, including the commissioner, as well as people connected to bowl games. I was thankfully, by the grace of God, I was able to do all of those things, coming to you